Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Music Mates, the podcast where I sometimes pick two albums from the 1990s and the usual group that you've come to love, talk about them. Today we have an electronica album to talk through. In fact, the last two albums we do from the 90s might both be from the same genre, part of the boom of digitally produced music from the mid-90s onwards. The group we have for you today is a trio from Bristol that combine dark hip-hop rhythms with soulful melodies to create a truly, almost hypnotic experience at times. The album by this group I've picked is their third studio effort and arguably due to singles like Teardrop and Angel, their most critically acclaimed work. The album is called Mezzanine and it's by the group Massive Attack. The group I mentioned earlier, as I said, was founded in Bristol, whose roots were based in the arrival of a Bristol-based collection of DJ artists in the early 80s called the Wild Bunch. When the organisation collapsed in the mid-80s, two of its members, Andrew Vowles and Grant Marshall, whose nicknames on the music scene were Mushroom and Daddy G, respectively decided to form their own group with a local graffiti artist called Robert Del Naja, nicknamed 3D. The group they formed was called Massive Attack in 1988. Massive Attack's first single was called Daydreaming, and with the help of another Wild Bunch member, Nelly Hooper, who'd worked with Bjork on Post, another album we've done on the podcast, they began work on an album which would go on to be released in 1991 under the name Blue Lines. It garnered them some acclaimed attention from critics, but ultimately wasn't much of a commercial success. Nelson went on to exit the group and to work on a solo career, while the group changed their name from Massive Attack simply to Massive, apparently to avoid any implication of approval for the UN's policy towards Iraq. The trio released a second album a few years later in 1994 called Protection, now called Massive Attack once more as the full name, while working with another popular electronica artist Tricky and Hooper again, as well as guest vocalists Nicolette and Tracy Thorn from Everything But the Girl. They released singles Sly, Karma Coma, and the self-titled track Protection alongside the album. Over the next few years before Mezzanine, they primarily produced remixes for other artists, Garbage being a notable one. Again, a band we've done on the podcast, as well as working with Madonna on a Marvin Gaye tribute song. Mezzanine was released in 1998 to much success, due especially to Teardrop being the main selling track of the album. The album reached highly on UK charts, as well as breaking into the US Billboard Top 200. Horace Andy came back to share vocals for the third consecutive time running, as well as Elizabeth Fraser and Sarah J. as newcomers. Shortly after, Vowles left the band over reasons to do with disliking the direction the band took with Mezzanine, but Del Naja and Marshall continued as a duo. Massive Attack released their fourth album in 2003, called 100th Window. It performed well, but didn't reach the same heights as Mezzanine did, and in 2010, they released their fifth album, Heligoland. They've done a few bits and pieces here and there, but haven't really done much since. So let's get started on Mezzanine.
Hello and welcome to Musical Mates.
This is all getting cut.
It's just like it's just got to be Ethan.
Ethan,
Yeah, I've
say it.
already introduced Music Mates Tony at this point.
Fuck. So, Angel, what a great song. Let's talk about it. It has a bit of a slow start to it, but I think it picks up. It sort of shows off the nice like chill atmosphere of this album. You know, I think a lot of the ones I've liked from Music Mates so far, the albums that have been picked, have been real heavy hitters, right? Like, you know, Rage Against the Machine, Garbage, fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers. This one's just kind of, you know, it's kind of chill, kind of mellow. Got some strange, like, ambiance to it. I quite like it. What do you all think?
Yeah, it's definitely got a sort of, I don't know. It just has. I think it's a feeling I get across this whole album. Really, is that it manages to find a mood, like that. There's an emotion somewhere in sort of all of these songs, that sort of comes across much more than any sort of riff or tune does. Which for me means that later they sort of blur a bit more into one, but definitely with Angel, it's a very strong start, and yeah, very, very good and slowly building up. Tune isn't really right, it's sort of, yeah, emotion, feeling.
Yeah, I
I
sort
mean-
of know what you mean. I guess it's less about driving a guitar or riff forward and more about building a texture from the start, I suppose.
Yeah, I get a sort of feeling of kind of like hopelessness from this song. Um, I mean, I wonder if that's a little bit married into the fact that probably the first time I heard this song was in Snatch, when it's kind of at a low point in the film. Um,
Yeah, I find it's one of those things where I always find it hard when I've heard a song in like a film to kind of disassociate that song with the scene. And Snatcher definitely comes right at the end of the second act, that kind of low point. I think it's a really good song though. Like I don't know if divorcing it from the context of a film I really like and the scene I really like, if that's like kind of putting me making me like it more than I normally would. But I think it's very haunting, like the kind of low tempo electronic, and I like how it kind of picks up and builds, and then you've got that great bit where it kind of, I think it's like love you, and it kind of echoes and then it explodes, and that's the scene where you see Brad Pitt kind of being held back as the caravan's on fire. I don't understand music, but it's cool. I don't know what's going on in this song, but I like it. And it's a good start to a very good album.
Do you think that while listening to Angel, you were able to dissociate yourself completely from Snatch or from where you first heard the song? Or is it always going to be there as like something that you think about if you ever hear Angel again, or have done at this point?
I think I'll probably always think of it, but I do have, because you gave it to me, the Snatch soundtrack album on my
Yeah.
phone, which I have just listened to just like randomly. So I have heard the song, but in the context of it being from the Snatch album. But I have heard the song, not watching the scene in the film, if that's kind of what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
does it give you
And
a
then
different feeling hearing it on a soundtrack to a film and then hearing it relative to songs by the artist that created the song in the first place? Does it make you think or feel two different things?
I think if it was like halfway through this album, it would be a bit different because I would have just heard a bunch of songs from these artists, and then hearing the song then, it kind of would have put it in that context. Whereas it being the first song, I was like, oh, this is the thing from Snatch. So I don't know. It's who knows.
Yeah.
Maybe in like 10 years, this will be my favorite song, and I'll forget it was in Snatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say when I first listened to this album, because I don't know, Snatch was an okay film, but I've only seen it once and it hasn't entirely stuck with me. So I did not recognize this as from Snatch until you mentioned, and I wouldn't be able to have told you which scene it comes in until you mentioned it, like before we started recording. So it is quite detached for me. But I think it's one of those things that, having also now watched Lock, Stock, Guy Ritchie, is it? He's very good at finding the right song for certain moments. So I feel, having pretty much experienced the two as separately as I can, that both fit this very well, or rather, like they both have those sorts of similar emotions. But I feel like the similar moment in Lock, Stock comes quite a bit earlier on, but it's when you've got I Want to Be Your Dog. That, again, I feel like perfectly marries both what's on screen
What
and
part of the
in the
film is
lyrics of the
that?
song.
I don't remember the song.
It it's when can't remember any of their names, but it's when the guys just lost everything to Dirty Harry, in like a high stakes poker match, and
Oh.
so it's him. You're sort of, the camera's trained on his face as he's sort of uh, like falling out, well, like stumbling in shock out of the
Yeah.
building, and just with the sort of repeating riff and the sort of the line over and over again of "I wanna be your dog" is just sort of it very well expresses the, like, I am in an undealable debt to this guy. And I think that riff is then also married in later in the soundtrack whenever a character's making a stupid decision.
No, I would definitely agree with you, Jonathan. I think I guess in the more general context of just music in film, I think it really works at elevating it. And you're right, Guy Ritchie is someone who does know what piece of music is really good. What piece of popular music is really good for going hand in hand with a particular scene. But it's interesting because I first heard this song in Snatch as well. But when I listened to this song, I visualized the music video in my head, and I think that's because, well, I think first of all that's because I've actually seen the music video. I'm not sure about you three, but if you haven't, obviously that's fine, of course. But I guess when I think of with Snatch, I associate so many other different things with it that when I hear this song, I don't really fixate on that as much. But when you have one particular, I guess, short video where this song just is the entire backing track for what you're watching, then I guess it comes. That sort of sticks with you a little bit more. It's especially since the music video is really good. I think I showed it to you, Jonathan, at some point a while ago. Um, I,
Yeah, I think you probably have, or at least when first listening to Angel, I was like, this sounds familiar. My first leap was Ethan's probably shown me the music
Yeah.
video.
yeah, it's because I heard Angel, and it really made me want to listen to more of this group because my parents talked about them every now and then. We don't really own any of their albums, but I think they do like a couple of songs by them. So I went and I listened to their most popular, most famous album, Mezzanine, which Angel and Teardrop was the other song that I knew because Teardrop's just the most famous song by the band, full stop. And that was when I discovered something that I actually really, really enjoyed. I guess maybe a year ago, I think I probably listened to this first album. And then that was around the time when I showed you the music video, which is, I'm not sure if you remember, but it's a guy getting out of his car and he's in a car park. He's trying to leave the building, and all of a sudden, these two people who are members of the band, incidentally, start walking behind him. And then, as the guy being followed starts, his pace quickens. He starts to run. They start to run after him, and then slowly, the group of people chasing this one guy gets bigger and bigger until they corner him. And everyone stops moving, and he turns around and starts walking towards the people who are following, and then they move backwards, and then he starts chasing after them, and that's how the video ends. Do you remember that at all?
Yes, I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good.
it
music
is a really
video.
good music video. It tells a really interesting story. I think it leaves you with questions as well, and it's really well choreographed, well directed. Um, I know there are a couple of people on this podcast that aren't a massive fan of music videos, but I would suggest that you watch it because it's a good 4 or 5 minute watch. I would say. But anyway, I've not really talked so much myself about what I actually really like about the song, so I guess I'll go through that now. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a really great opener to the album. It is probably my favourite. I'll be honest, that's partially because it's the first song I heard by the band. I think that's just how things work a lot of the time. But I also think its composition is really good. We talked about, well, Tony mentioned how it kind of starts off slow and it sort of builds a little bit, and then it kind of, you guys mentioned that it all sort of explodes during the sort of love me section. Love you rather. And I think that's something that the band does quite well. That they're good at building tension and energy, and then letting it all release at a very particular moment. And that there isn't a part of this song that really punches or hits quite as well as when that electric guitar comes swooping in, when everything just sort of, like I said, it all just releases at one moment, at the sort of minute and a half mark maybe. And I really like. There's something almost a little bit symmetrical about this song too, and I'll talk about it when we get to Dissolved Girl, if we actually even get that far before we decide to give up talking about Mezzanine. But I think there's a lot of symmetry in their music. I think songs often start out the same way and end the same way, and I think sort of the high point, or I guess the loudest, the most intense part of the song is towards the middle. And this song has that. It starts off in like a very, very sort of a quiet way. It's building momentum. It's got instruments coming in and sounds, and then towards the end it sort of thins out, just like it started. I'm also a really big fan of some of the individual sounds you hear in this song. There's a recurring guitar note that's played at a really finely tuned pitch, and it sounds almost like a siren. I can't tell you. I mean, I can't really sing the note, but it is a very particular moment. I think it happens twice in the song, and it actually happens just before that really great moment where it all just kicks into second gear, and it really has this feeling of an angel descending right in front of you. It has that. It really has that feeling. I think the vocals are really good. It's a guest vocalist called Horace Andy. He actually does a couple of songs on this album. I know the lyrics aren't particularly long or quite short, but they still resonate really well with the melody to me. They're very, very soulful. I think that's what a lot of the artists who actually do the vocals on this track do well. Because it's not just... so there's three members, and two of them tend to do quite a bit of the singing, but then they also bring in a lot of guest vocalists, I think, to add to the range that you get across the album, and I think that works extremely well. But what Horace Andy has that I really like is that there's almost a vibrato effect to his vocals. It kind of oscillates slightly when he leads a particular note that he's singing a kind of last for a bit longer. And I don't think it's particularly noticeable at first, but it does kind of you do sort of hear it after a while. I just think it's a really, really terrific song to start off the album with, and that's all I have to say. So we can move on to Rising Sun if you guys want to.
Sure. I quite like Rising Sun. Again, as Ethan mentioned earlier, I think there is a bit of like a strong weight towards the earlier ones in the earlier songs in the album, just because they're the ones that you listen to first, right? And then you sort of like listen to this album. It sort of like puts you in a state where you're not really like thinking about it. It's just kind of there in your head, right? But yeah, Rising Sun I quite like because it's got this like the way the vocals are like almost like rolling in a sense, right? You get this kind of, I don't know, weird like ASMR sense of like the person's like mouth being like right there in front of you singing,
Yeah,
which is quite strange. But I quite like that. But what does everyone else think?
I guess the whole thing that we say with every album, that like, oh yeah, it starts good and then it's not as good by the end. I think it's definitely more of a case. I always think it's more of a case that artists just front-load their good songs. Like the first 4 songs in this album were the 4 singles from the album. So I think even if these were the last 4 songs in the album, I think we would probably still think that they were the best 4. Or amongst the best. I know people's second, third, and fourth choice might not be in the top 4, but yeah, it's a good song. My notes, I think it's because I listened to them twice, both last week. I can't really remember, but my notes are very strange. Like I've written wolf noises ? Shifts rhythm halfway through. I can't describe this song. Haha. I remember that it was kind of I don't know the accent, but it was like very obviously like an English person, and it's kind of I think it's got like a really kind of, I don't know, it's not rap, but it's like a kind of down tempo like rhythm to the vocals that I really liked, and the fact that as Ethan said, they bring on a lot of guest vocalists. I think that really helps keep the even though the music can sound kind of similar, you always got a different lyrical style, and I really kind of dig this one in this song, but I can't remember apparently. What do other people think?
Jonathan?
So this is one that washes over me more and doesn't... Yeah, this one does not leave the impact that Angel and Teardrop did. I don't know, I think... No, I think it's something... Maybe it's because of the length of the first one that... I think my feeling when I first got into Rising Sun and then reaching the sort of bit in the middle where it sort of pauses and then restarts up again was just sort of a feeling of, oh, I still have a lot of this album to go.
Yeah, they don't really make short songs, do they? I think sometimes it definitely works, it being a long song, because you really get, I think you really, really sort of get lost in it, and I really like that with some of the songs, especially Angel, Teardrop and Dissolved Girl. But there are definitely a couple. We'll get to Inertia Creeps later, and I do really like Inertia Creeps. I think it's very good, but I think it outstays its welcome just a little bit too long. And I think towards the end, they're not really doing enough to warrant that song length. And Rising Sun does have that a little bit as well, Jonathan. I will agree with you on that. Yeah. But it is another one that I really like. I think Angel to me is a bit of a black sheep on the album. It's kind of interesting when you think about what the first track off of an album should do and how it should, I guess, set up recurring themes or recurring sounds or things, or it should be a taster for the album. And I'm probably going to be talking about Bjork a fair amount on this episode. But when we did Bjork, I remember talking about how Army of Me is very different to the rest of the album, whereas the second song off, Post, Hyper Ballad, I guess I remember saying was a lot more in key with, I think, the rest of the album. And I have the exact same thing here, where I feel like Angel is... It's still Massive Attack, obviously, but I think Rising Sun... I think it sets up a lot more of what you'll hear for the rest of the album than Angel does, if you ask me. I don't know if you guys agree with that at all.
I think the vocals like more like that style is used a bit more frequently. I think so. I kind of see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're definitely the vocals, but I still even think the certain sounds and tones that you get on Rising Sun are a lot more prominent, I guess, in the second half of the album. Whereas I think, I don't know, I guess what makes Teardrop stand out so well is that it sounds nothing like the rest of the album. It really, really does, stand quite highly as being a memorable track. And you mentioned vocals, and it's definitely one of the stronger aspects of Rising Sun, because it's the two singers from Massive Attack, so Del Naja and Marshall. Their joint effort on vocals the back and forth between the two really keeps the song moving forward for me, and especially since their voices to me sound so different. I think Harry, when he said it's not really rap, but it's kind of a down tempo sort of thing, I think is a really, really good way of actually talking about it. And Del Naja definitely has that. His enunciations are really catchy, and it really does have that. I feel like you really do hang on his every word quite well, whereas Marshall's voice is a lot deeper, and it really creates this. I feel like it creates quite a strong foundation for the instruments in his sections. Where when you think of like a bass, I guess, being the foundation of a song, I think with he's almost got like a booming voice, and you hear it later on the album as well. I'm not sure if you three know. If you three are aware of which one's which. So the guy who starts off singing this song is Del Naja, and Marshall is the one who pitches in every now and then, but I don't think he sings as much. And Del Naja is also the guy who sings on Inertia Creep. I think he probably does most of the vocals on the album. I mean, you guys definitely heard two different vocals on this, right? Two different singers.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a unique back and forth between them.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, Jonathan mentioned the pause about halfway through, where it goes back into it, and I really, really like that section because everything cuts out and you get this really sort of sinister groove that comes in and goes on to support most of the rest of the song. And I think it's another thing that Massive Attack does really well. I find that their songs are they're so compact in a sense, and they're really dense, and I think that there's so many little minute nuances that make up the music. I think it was something that we talked about a little bit when we did OK Computer, where their songs feel so full, and you really, really have to listen to some of the songs a lot of times to notice so many of these small details, and that's one of the things that you can do, I guess, with more digitalized music. that's not so. I mean, sure, that there's rock influences in the songs, and there's guitars and basses and drums, and sure, but a lot of this music is electronica. And with electronica, you have a lot of possibilities to kind of layer the tracks in a way that I don't think you'd quite be able to do with rock, where it's a bit more straightforward, two guitars and an amp you sort of play. You've got a couple of effects in there, and I think it definitely suits that style of music well. What do you three think?
Just yeah, I always wonder what it must be like when you're creating a more like electronica stuff, where a lot of it is in the edit, how it sounds in a way that's not quite so much when you're doing a more typical rock and roll song. Because when you're there in the studio and you're playing a more typical song, you've heard pretty much what it's going to sound like by the end, and they're just going to put a few of the tracks together and then they'll be done. But with this, like, you've got these building blocks that you're then going to use to potentially create anything from that. And so I sort of wonder what it's like having to put together and who ends up with the most control.
I imagine it's more like making like a digital song where, if anything, they'd like block in the acoustic elements first, right? That are gonna then be live recorded with, like, I don't know, a sound bank of fucking guitar strums, so they can get the structure of like all the weird echoey shit, you know, and all the effects in. And then they go and like, okay, well, now that we've got this, we'll fucking record it, you know. But maybe, I don't know. I've made like. I made that one shit song in Soundation. You know, what do I know?
Should we
go
yeah, I think...
onto the third song?
The third song. Who wants to talk about
Teardrop,
the third song?
right?
Yeah, Teardrop.
Teardrop. I think it reminds me a lot of like the first one, Angel, where Ethan you use the metaphor, right, of like it's like an angel, you know, coming down, right? And I think the high notes in, or just the fact that like the like vocals are like such like in a higher range. I don't know how to fucking describe it. Like gives it like that sort of like heavenly, like divine feeling to it, which very good contrast to the second song, where it's like kind of greasy, you know, like right up in your ear kind of like music, whereas this is like, yeah, it's definitely like coming from above, you know, holy light and all that. Fucking interesting emotional range. Quite like Teardrop. What's everyone else's opinions?
Yeah, I think especially compared to Rising Sun and most of the other songs on this album, there's a much cleaner feel from this song.
Definitely.
A sort of kind of washed away almost. Like it's just a lot more bare than the sort of previous ones, and better for it really. In the sort of very simple way it builds up, sort of like Angel again.
Harry, do you have thoughts about Teardrop?
Harry?
Yeah.
What do you think
Good
of Teardrop?
It's probably the best song on the album. Yeah, I mean, this is the one that I definitely heard before. I think it's the theme song for House.
Yeah.
I think the music video was sampled in Mad Max Fury Road, and there's a shot from the music video that's in that film.
Neat.
It sounds very similar to Angel at the start, at the very start. I like the guest kind of vocalist. I mean, like Patrick Bateman, I don't like singers, but I guess I prefer female singers to male singers in general.
I think I agree.
You know, but yeah, it's a pretty good song. I really don't have that much to say about it, but I liked it.
We don't have to spend 12 minutes on every song. That's all right.
I think this to Inertia Creeps is probably the best song to song, you know, because they're probably my two favorites. So going from this to the next one is pretty good. And that's a good transition. But Ethan's got like 10 minutes of things to say about Teardrop, unfortunately.
I've got a little bit less than Angel, I think, but I do have a fair amount to say about it. So I agree with everything that's been said. I think Teardrop really is. I mean, there's a reason it is the most famous, popular song by the band. When I first heard it, knowing it was Teardrop and Massive Attack, I'm sure I'd heard it before somewhere as well. I've never watched House, but it does have that kind of like, I have definitely heard this before at some point. So it goes to show another facet of the group that I really enjoy. I think one of the really, really great things about Mezzanine is that I know we've sort of joked about how, as with a lot of albums that we've done on this podcast, things start to sort of blur into one when you go through it. But I think that the way that they've actually ordered the songs on this album is really key to making you get through it, because there's always I always feel like when it comes to vocalists on Mezzanine, they always sort of separate them out so that you have so the first one you got Horace Andy, and then the two you've got the two members from Massive Attack, and then you got Liz Fraser on Teardrop, and they kind of have this thing where it towards the album they don't do it as much, but it all feels like they sort of they have things on rotation, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think
there's like an interplay, like a call and response.
Yeah. And I also really like the fact that as the album goes on, they'll have different vocalists work together on particular tracks rather than just having them sort of stand by themselves on one particular song. And it's actually I think guest vocalists is definitely something that can really, really be great when you pick your vocalists right for particular songs, rather than just having it be one of the full-time members of the band. And it's something that Gorillaz are actually really well known for. So Gorillaz has two members. Maybe it's changed in the last few years, because I've not really listened to their most recent music at all for a while now. But when they started out, it was one guy called Jamie something, I think, and he does most of the melody writing, whereas Damon Albarn, who is of course the singer from Blur, is the prominent vocalist on most of the tracks. But they'll always bring in people from different bands or different groups, and I guess it keeps the music interesting, because I think it provides a wider range of different sounds and emotions and feelings. And Teardrop really, really benefits from having Liz Fraser, who goes on to sing, I think. So Sarah J is on Dissolved Girl, and I think Liz Fraser is on Group 4 and Black Milk as well. So she does a couple of songs on this album, but I really think this is the one that stands out for her. I can't really imagine one of the members of the band singing this song and having the same impact as I guess as a woman specifically singing it. It really does own Teardrop, and it's a massive part of what makes it the most well-known song by Massive Attack. It's of course not the only part. I think the lead hooks are, I guess, really hooking. Especially the main guitar part, which I think is played on a harpsichord. I think I read. I like the way that it gradually comes in. It starts off really quiet and it becomes louder towards the beginning. And in the piano chords that start off each bar for the rest of the song strike a really nice balance with the harpsichord as well. And I've written down in my notes, it was at this part in my notes that I stopped typing and listened to the song, because it completely took me away from what I was doing. And that's something that I found often in this while listening to this album. I try and sort of it's also, I guess, one of the reasons that it's taken us so long to record this album, because towards the beginning I kept delaying it because I hadn't properly written the notes for it, and it's because it took me so long to write notes for a particular song, because while I'm listening to the song trying to write down what it makes me feel or what I like about it, I just stop and end up listening to the song because it completely takes me away from my note writing.
You don't really think about it, you're just kind of there. Which I quite like.
I listened to the album a couple of times. First time I didn't take notes, second time I did. I felt like I enjoyed it a lot more the first time. And originally I think I put that down to just the album not being as good. as I thought it was. But I think it really is just best experience when you're not trying to work out like what you like about it. Like, I think my notes are pretty bad, and I kind of gave up halfway through writing them because I was just like, well, this is just better if you kind of just not as background music, but if you just kind of let yourself be taken over by it and not really analyze how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel this is very much background music to me, but I think unlike with Ethan where it has like tendrils that drag him in, for me it's more like a slippery eel where I just can't grab hold of it. There's sort of different reasons why we can't write notes on it, but both with a similar sort of thing of we can't, struggling to, I guess, think about it in that sort of way.
It's hard to talk about, I guess. Yeah, it's.
So welcome to our podcast.
Can you tell we've been doing this for 4 years?
We've only got one episode left, one song left, sorry, of this album, and then we're done though. So.
Yeah, very, very short album, I'll be honest. Very short album. But Inertia Creeps, man. It's a creeper. Oh, man. So we back in the mines.
No, what are you doing, Tony?
Got our pickaxe swinging from side to side. Sides. Someone stop me. Just talk about the song.
So I think I've managed to avoid ever listening to Creeper Oh Man. And I live in a happy world. But this is the only song I have a note for, and it's just moving up slowly, but like written phonetically. Because that's just the thing that I think describes the music they do as a whole quite well. That all their music is pretty much just moving up slowly, the soundtrack. And yeah, there's just something in the way that line is said multiple times that is quite distinctive. I think it's because it gives emphasis to a different part of the word that you normally would when you're just saying it. I think it's the sort of elongated sort of O sounds moving up slowly.
Oh yeah, there is definitely a term for it as well. I'm trying to remember what it is, but I think it's going to escape me. Where you put the emphasis on a particular word in your lyrics, where ordinarily the emphasis wouldn't be on that vowel or that particular part of the word. Oh God, I'll probably search it up at some point after the podcast because I heard it in a video that I watched recently as well, which was about like how to write good lyrics or something like that, and there was definitely a part in there where it actually critiqued that rather than talk about how good it is. Where I can't remember what it was that he exactly said, but I think he complained that it doesn't sit well when you try and change how you enunciate a particular word to him, I guess. I think he is an example of where he's. I think he was watching a mate perform in a band, and I think the word that he said was secret, where you expect the emphasis to be on secret, so it's on the C. But then he was like secret or something like that, and it just didn't quite gel with the flow of the song.
I understand that. I mean, whatever they're doing, right? Their weird trickery with syllable stress, definitely, like makes the song like that lyric. Inertia creeps, moving up slowly. Stick in your head. That's definitely the thing that was like the lyric that was in my head as I was doing the dishes, like after watching the album. For fucking sake, and it reminds me of fucking someone from Game Grumps. It was either Dan or Ross saying like, they put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. It's just how you can just fuck with people by because it's like you never really think that English has the rules where there's like a pattern to it, where you expect there to be syllable stress on certain words, but if you say fucking something wrong, you're like, oh no.
There's a video I love where the guy goes through each of the vowels and then just picks one way to pronounce them and then just continues pronouncing them like that as they then go through the video. And by the end, it is just this indistinguishable mess of what they're saying because they're pronouncing every vowel, but just only one way that they are in like one other word, and it just all crumbles into being almost unintelligible. But it sort of shows you the weird way that I don't know, a kind of language is built up.
English is kind of a hell language, I'll be honest. But at least it doesn't have fucking gender on words and 6 different word versions of the way the can be said. So wins and losses,
I think,
swings and roundabouts.
I think Inertia Creeps, getting back to the fucking topic, is good because you're talking about the emphasis, but I think what really stood out to me was the way that the voice almost becomes an instrument. You've kind of got these up-tempo drum beats, and it's very repetitive, and you've almost got like a thing that I'm very bad at talking about music, but I like how sometimes a voice can just become an instrument by following the same cadence and rhythm as kind of a repeatedly hitting an instrument. And I think he even said this was produced by the same person that produced the Post by Bjork, which is it's definitely it's not as weird as that, obviously, but I guess this album gives me Bjork vibes in that I like it. That's all that means. Bjork vibes is when I like something now. Of this. Anyway, it's a good song. It slaps. that's it. And Inertia Creeps. Good song.
Gonna say it probably would have been better to mention this in the previous one, but there's a quote I found about Liz Fraser, but I think it fits quite well for what you mentioned about almost like singing as a rhythm. So Jason Ankeny described her voice, her as an utterly unique performer whose swooping operatic vocals relied less on any recognizable language than on the subjective sounds and textures of verbalized emotions. Which, just reading that sentence, I'm just like, why are we doing this? There's better people. I think that's a...
There's a shortage, right? There's a need for us to be really shit at talking about things.
Don't worry, no one's
They've
listening.
only got competent people talking about music. What they really need is incompetent people. I think, although that's about Liz Fraser, I think it is quite good at
you're just a bunch of chimps.
Quite good at what Massive Attack does across a lot of its songs of, I guess, that sort of syllable dissonance, but just there, I don't know, creating a rhythm and perhaps, achieving less a sort of more typical view of singing and more this creation of rhythm and emotion through vocals.
Yeah.
There's another thing about this song, which is the kind of background of it has that sort of stereotypical Middle Eastern feel to it. I don't know, that sort of, I guess it's a sort of sitar-ish kind of sound that they have at moments. And
I wrote something similar.
It's the sort of, some of these are sounds that you'd use if you're doing like an establishing shot somewhere in the Middle East.
It's fucking funny.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the other things that makes this one of the more different and notable songs, is that it has a very different sort of vibe, or a sort of more, I don't know, it feels like it steps somewhere else more than other songs on this album do.
Yeah, it's definitely, I guess. Well, I mean, it's got creep in the name. It is quite creepy, and it does have something kind of like almost menacing and very, very innately sinister about it while listening to it. That's partly because of the vocals sounding as they do. That really adds to that effect quite a lot. But you mentioned vaguely. You mentioned it kind of reminded you of something that felt vaguely Middle Eastern. And I wrote the exact same thing. I think it has those kinds of sitar-y sounds as well. The other thing that I like about it is that it has, I think with the drums especially, it has this really sort of tribal feel to it at times. Um, yeah, and again, Harry mentioned her as
It
yeah.
it feels the most it feels the most like world inspired song on the album.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, that's okay. I do agree with that. Yeah, it does. And yeah, so it reminds me of Bjork a little bit in that sense. Um, oh God. But apart from that, I don't.
It's like Dark Souls.
Yeah, always loops back around, doesn't it? But
It's like a podcast. We have to make callbacks to the last thing we did.
are we going to talk about Letdown at some point on this album as well? Then
We're going to talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion.
no, can we just leave that alone for one episode, please?
All right. I'll bring it up.
Yeah. I think you guys have talked about Inertia Creeps quite well. I don't have much more to say about it. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Rising Sun that I feel like it kind of... I think it goes on for almost 6 minutes, and I feel like it could probably trim a little bit off of that to keep it as engaging as it kicks off for the first few minutes. But apart from that, I think it's a really, really good song, and I like it a lot. So we can move on to Exchange, the fifth song on the album.
Yeah, I wonder if because we've joked around about how these last few have all sort of blurred into one. Maybe what we should do, if any of us have anything particular about these coming songs, we just talk about those and sort of gloss over some of those that haven't stuck out.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Exchange, I don't remember anything particular about it. The ones I would want to talk about would be like Black Milk, and maybe.
Yeah. All right. Shall I talk about
Girl.
What?
I could talk about Exchange then.
Yeah, I've got a couple
like
of things about
Exchange.
Exchange as well, so I'll mention those after Harry.
All right.
So this is about the entire album, but I wrote a fusion of electronic dance and rock creates a unique sound and atmosphere, which is a good thing. Exchange is definitely less the rock side of it. It gave me real lo-fi hip hop beats to relax / study to vibes just because of the low tempo of it, and it's way too long. But it's also got that thing of that I'll just forgive, where you're only listening to Exchange in the context of listening to an entire album, and the point of the album is it's the midpoint. It's used again right at the end, but this signifies you've listened to the bangers and now we're going to get the less good stuff, and this is the transitional song, so I'll always forgive a transitional song. I would never listen to this on its own, but as a part of the album I like it. When I first listened to the album I stopped at this point, and I'd recommend that if you're gonna have to, if you're doing a podcast, anyone listening on this album, and you've got a good place to stop after Exchange is that good place to stop. And Ethan, do you want to say your things so we can finish this podcast?
I would. Exchange is one of the weaker songs on the album for me. I think what I'm not a massive fan of is I find it very, very repetitive. And it's crazy because I could happily listen to Dissolved Girl at any time, which is like a 6 minute over song, and this is about 4 minutes or so. But the thing about other songs on the album that make me go, okay, well, I'll let you get away with 6, 7 minutes, even 8 for Group 4, is that when it finds a groove or a rhythm that it lays down as, like, I guess the starting point of the song, it always finds new ways to build on it and keep you interested, whereas Exchange, for me, doesn't really do much in its 4 minute time. It starts off quite well, and I definitely agree with you. It is quite chilled out and mellow, and it is nice to listen to. I don't think it's a bad song by any means, but if I'm listening to the album in one go, I'll always skip through it just because it's 4 minutes of pretty much the same thing, with not much more going on for it. And I think in terms of more chilled out, less intense songs on the album, I think Black Milk later on is a lot better for that, and partly because it has vocals and isn't just an instrumental. I think that kind of harms Exchange. Well, I think it harms this version of Exchange, at least, because this one doesn't have vocals on it, but yeah. I guess the second version of it, which is the final track on the album, is the one where Horace Andy does come on and do vocals for it. But you are right, Harry. It's a midpoint of the album. It's almost like an interlude. So I can't
An
really
intermission.
I can't really shit on it for being an interlude, because it is the half point of the album. It is kind of just meant to be that intermission. So that's all I've got to say about Exchange. If you want to move on to something else you guys would rather talk about.
Yeah, I'd quite like to talk about Dissolved Girl just quickly. I think it kind of reminded me of like Garbage a bit. I don't know. I was getting that vibe. There's a really cool bit where the guitar picks up in it, and I just
Yeah.
like the like the vocal is right. Like I like when like especially female vocals, they don't like just sing perfectly. In this there's like it's like Symphogear, right? I'm bringing it back. We have to loop around like Dark Souls. Where you can tell there's like a lot of like exertion behind the voice, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's like really quiet, there's like a like you're like really like desperate about it. Except it's not like super intense, which I really like.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm totally with you on that. It's the Dissolved Girl for me is a really 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 strong song on the album. It's one of my favorites. It's in fact it's probably even my favorite song after Angel. I think I probably like it a little bit more than Teardrop, and it is for a few reasons. I think when I talked about Angel at the beginning, I talked about how it almost has this symmetrical feel to it, and this song to me has the same thing, where it feels like it's separated into three really distinct sections, but not so distinct that they sound like it's three different songs. They really merge well with one another and mirror each other quite nicely. And it almost has the contrast of something like a grunge song, for instance, where it's not a particularly interesting by name technique, but it's the whole loud quiet thing of having a sort of cleaner, softer verse, but then a louder, rocky chorus. And this doesn't quite have that, where it has the verse chorus interchange. But it does start off quite sort of tranquil and not very hard. And then Tony, when you made that link to Garbage, I think you're completely spot on. It has that breakdown section, which is sort of the second third of the song, where it has like a rock progression, and then it sort of cuts out and it goes back to the way that it started, and it has some more subtleties going on for it. It doesn't sound exactly the same as the first third of the song, but it still has that really mirroring parallel, that makes it stand out for me quite a lot. And like I said, it does remind me of a grunge song in that sense, where it has the contrast between loud and quiet, and they really work perfectly with one another. And you mentioned the vocals as well, and I think you're right as well when you say it kind of has this sort of, it has like a desperate quality to it, and there's an exertion going on. And I think it's kind of a shame, because Sarah J, this is the only song that she does singing for. The other female vocalist being Liz Fraser, who does Teardrop and Black Milk, and Sarah J's only on this one track, which I think is kind of a shame, because it's one of the selling points of Dissolved Girl for me. It's like, I think what I really like about, I guess, the less rocky parts of this song is that her voice is so light, and I think it's that slightly raspy quality to it that makes it feel like there's
Yeah.
exertion. Do you kind of see what I mean from there?
Yeah. I think I understand. I like that it's not like super like clean, right? There's a bit of texture to it.
Yeah.
But still, very very overall like calming. Just
No, definitely. There's something almost kind of ethereal about it at times, and it's sort of a tone that I think is kind of hard to achieve, and she does a really really good job with it. The bass line also supports the vocals really well, in having it's got a light feel to it. It sounds almost kind of graceful at times, and it also passes the same test that Angel does, where you like I said earlier, you can just feel lost in it for me, and I think time almost elapses while you're listening to it. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, where you kind of get pulled away from something that you're doing, and you sort of just you just sort of listen to the song. And Harry mentioned that he liked it more on a second time through. Sorry, on the first time through, where he wasn't making notes for it. And I think that's partly, again, that's another reason why I like Massive Attack and the songs on this album. I think sometimes really long songs can be very shit and you just want to move on to the next one. But I think songs that are like 5-6 minutes long on this album are really, really amazing. Because I think what they're going for are songs for you to just to pull you in and then not let you go for a while, and they really want you to feel kind of submerged by the sounds that you're listening to on a particular track. And Dissolve Girl being 6 minutes long, it is something that I can't think of any other way to say you get lost in it. And that's something that I really love about a song. And that's why Dissolve Girl, for me, is such a banger, if you ask me.
You've said everything that I had written down between the two of you in a more eloquent way. And let's move on to Man Next Door, unless Jono has anything to say.
No, I don't have anything, except I feel I'm the least drawn in, or rather, I don't really get drawn in. I get sort of not quite pushed away as much, but I don't know. I find it difficult to focus on these songs.
Did you like The Man Next Door? That's the question.
We'll see when I listen to it now. As I say, none of these in the last half stood out to me.
I think I'll say about it quick that it may be my least favourite. I don't actually like Mezzanine much either, but it's the delivery style of the vocals that don't do it for me. It sounds kind of like a ballad, like an old kind of shanty style, which is unique. I appreciate, because if it had just been another song like all the rest of them at this point, I would have been getting tired, being like, come on, Ethan, why am I listening to this again? But it is unique, and I appreciate them for mixing it up. But it just didn't really work for me. What about you guys?
I quite like.
Now I've got to that bit and remembered some stuff about this song. I think it works. I don't know. For me, it's part of that. What happens throughout this album of just different sounding vocals that wouldn't conventionally work, but kind of create something that isn't bad. So I'm all right with it. It sort of is distinctive, I'd say. I say after admitting I did not remember this song at the beginning.
Yeah, but Man Next Door definitely has that inertia creeps quality, where there's that that rising lilt to it, right? That's real neat, and I like that it's again like a break from the there's not I don't think there's many albums or any albums that we've done that sort of back and forth between vocalists so much, but definitely keeps things fresh, keeps things interesting, which is nice.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think Black Milk and
Can I say something about Man Next Door really quickly before we go on to Black Milk?
Go ahead.
I don't have much to say about it. I think the one thing that I would like to just say is I think the thing that I do like about it is the drum progression of Man Next Door is sampled from When the Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin. Yeah, and it's going to be really, really funny when we review Mothership later on in the podcast. And when we come to talking about
Disc 1.
just disc 1. When it comes to talking about When the Levee Breaks, it'll be really funny when I read off this fucking long list of all of the bands and artists that have sampled the really iconic drum part that's on that track. I mean, we already talked about Army of Me, which is from the Bjork album that we did that sampled it as well, and. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about Man Next Door. I'm looking forward to doing Led Zeppelin. I guess that's my main thing that I've got to say about this song.
Same. Yeah. That'd be good. Do you know what is also good? Black Milk.
Mhm.
Good song. That's all I have to say. Tony, you said you like this one, right?
Yeah. I think it's like a I want to say it's like a good version of "Waiting for the Night" from Violator.
What a callback!
I haven't thought about that song.
That's the one that you
in
liked
years.
as well, Harry. That we all just shat on for like a couple of minutes.
It's a good song.
or there's some other like longer song in Depeche Mode that's like kind of like trying to go for this vibe, but I think it just works better with a female vocalist. It's got a very dreamlike, just almost like a lullaby quality to it, which really stuck out to me. This is I honestly don't remember any songs past this point in the album. I'll be honest. There might be the chance that I just stopped listening and I couldn't tell you, but yeah, this one, so it's very, very calming, just a nice I'm just fucking vibing to it at this point. This is good.
So, listening to this one and remembering what it is, this is just the sound I associate with just the rest of the album. I mean, again, it's the same with Bad Next Door and Dissolved Girl, really, but yeah, I remember listening to it and thinking, yep, this is more of this album.
Keeps going.
Yeah, 6 minutes and 22 seconds.
That's probably the shortest song on the album, to be honest.
What was that
it's
thing,
not.
Ethan? You sent like a YouTube version of this album where every song was this one length or something.
Yeah, it's a really weird one where it was like so
fucked.
every song for some reason was the length of Angel, right? But it was weird because if a song was 4 minutes, for instance, right, then the last 2 minutes and 21 of that YouTube video would just be nothing. It would just be complete silence, and then the next song would start, and you'd have 6 minutes and 21 seconds of the song, and then just silence until the 6:21 is over. And then for group 4, which is over 6 minutes and 21, it just fucking cuts off the song like midway through, and then goes on to Exchange, the second version. I don't know what that playlist is doing.
That's fucking funny. I imagine maybe someone's like software for fucking ripping the album just fucked up real bad, which would be funny.
One thing, if we're just mentioning random shit now, sorry, we are mentioning random shit now, that I want to talk about. But one of the reasons I actually really like this album, which is weird because you know how much I hate music videos, but I actually think the album artwork, the cover is fantastic and is actually maybe my favorite thing about the album. It's just I think it's such a it's kind of a disgusting image, but it's also kind of cleanly presented and cool. And then like I feel like just that image with the first few songs in particular just really kind of it gave me like a feeling. I can't tell you what that feeling was, but it was there. And yeah, that's the thing I like about this album. And I genuinely can't remember the song Black Milk that I say I like. My one note is cool song. I'm sure Ethan's got some notes. So,
yeah.
Anything to say about it?
I've got a couple. Yeah, it's really chilled out. It's pleasant to listen to. It's quite nice and easygoing in a Massive Attack way. I think, yeah, Liz Fraser's vocals are really soothing. And even though the song itself is quite repetitive, it still, I guess, builds on existing melodies in the usual Massive Attack way that works quite well, where it doesn't just leave you on that same identical, I guess, riff or tune for too long. It always does. It does find ways to spice things up and keep you going for the full song. Yeah, Black Milk's good. Black Milk's good. It's probably not my favourite, but I wouldn't say it's Exchange levels of bad. Like, I mean, no, I already said I liked Exchange. Exchange is okay, but yeah, I don't have much more to say than that. And I've of course not even listened to the last 3 songs on the album, so you 3 are going to have to talk about them amongst yourselves while I sit back and say nothing.
Well, Mezzanine is I really didn't like. It was just I don't know. I guess the fusion of kind of sounds didn't really work for me, and it was one of those rare examples. I guess Radiohead's "The Bends" is another one, which doesn't actually have a song called "The Bends" in. Or maybe it does, and it's just a bad song. But
It does, yeah.
it does, but it's a bad song. Where like the album
And you're right.
is named after like a bad song in the album. Like it's a cool word, and I'm sure it means something. I'm just dumb, but I just didn't like the song.
See, that's
Isn't it like-
why I wonder why it is called Mezzanine, because it's just like a between. I guess it's a between floors sort of thing. It's what a sort of mezzanine is.
What do you mean a between floors
Because
thing?
It's sort of hard to describe, really. The example I have is with the in my uni, the like there's the engineering bay for the Formula student team. That's a mezzanine. Because it's basically if you're on the first floor, you go down half a step and then you're there on that floor. And so it's not on the first floor and it's not on the ground floor. It's sort of halfway in between. And so that's sort of what mezzanine means. So I guess then, to answer the question I was about to ask, that it's sort of called that as a sort of like between things, not quite its own. I don't know, that kind of listlessness almost.
Yeah,
is
about
why
being
I'm
in an odd
guessing It's called
place.
mezzanine. Yeah. But no, yeah, it is a cool word. It just kind of means something dull, really. It's sort of it's like, well, because it's just a thing you'd have in a building, you know. It's just like I was about to say, it's like, you know, having a band called The Doors. No, it's
It could mean that, Jonathan. Or, in financial terms, it could
Ooh.
be relating to or denoting unsecured higher yielding loans that are subordinate to bank loans and secured loans but rank above equity. That's
What
what
the
they
fucking
could
Big
be. Yeah, that
Short?
does sound like something that fucking Margot Robbie would talk about in a bathtub. Yeah.
In a really condescending way. It's not fun to watch.
Yeah.
Big Short's a
Right.
good film.
Yeah, are we taking this podcast off the rails? Are we starting episode 1 of Minecraft punching wood? I don't have
Well, we
anything
could
to
start
say
talking
about
about
the rest.
Group 4, maybe. Because this is the penultimate song, but the last like real song, and it's very long. So let's try and make it the shortest one we talk about, I guess. Anyone like this one?
I mean, I have nothing to say. I cannot remember it.
Yeah,
Tony, you like it?
I think it's just like a worse version of other songs on the album, but it's still good, but it's not like amazing. I don't know.
Ethan?
It kind of goes a bit off the walls, you know. It has some like discordant tones at the end.
Yeah, I remember
I don't
liking
know.
it. Sorry, I remember liking it. I don't like to think of it as the penultimate song, just because I've not actually verified this anywhere. But I get the impression. I get the impression that Exchange in brackets is just like a bonus track, and Group 4 is meant to be the final song on the album, and it would, like you say, make sense because it is about 8 minutes long. Yeah, I don't have anything to say. I do like it. I think it's a good song, and I think for 8 minutes it does do enough to make me want to listen to it and not get bored of it. But I don't really have much more to say about it than that. I think you guys are right though. It kind of is like a combination of things that are better on other songs on the album more than anything. Yeah.
I think
like
it's
a weird, like best of mix, but fucking worst of.
I think
I'm being
for
too
like a
harsh.
very
I think
long,
it's all right. I think it's all right.
for a very long song, it's not like the epic that some albums have. You know, they have the 7 or 8 minutes that kind of flow, and like I did lots of different songs that really work together. It definitely feels very cohesive, but it still justifies its length. I feel like it stays interesting, and with the kind of different fusion of different vocalists in the song, like you've said just before, I think Tony said it. It does feel like the culmination of this album, But instead of a worst of, I guess I'm a fan of this style of music, so I'll say it's a best of. And as for Exchange, I mean, yeah, it is a repeated track. I always will forgive a final song for just being like not that great. In the same way, I'll forgive a midpoint for being not that great for some reason. And the fact that it's the same not that great song, but they've added lyrics,
Yeah, it's
which
it's kind
I
of
actually
weird,
like more.
right? Because the
Um,
final song on an album should be. It's like if you're watching a film, right? And it's the first time that you've seen it. What you're going to take away from it, I guess, most of the time, is how you feel about the ending, because it's always leading up to the final scene, right? But I feel like albums that we've talked about, or just music in general, is really strange because I feel like the thing that makes more of an impact is the first song that you listen to. And as you go through the album, it, there could still be high points, but I feel like overall your attention span is just going to decrease as the album goes on, and you'll kind of it's. I don't even blame Jonathan for saying that they all blur into one, because you are more inclined to go on and kind of think, oh, this song sounds the same as the last one about 7 or 8 tracks in. So when it comes to the final song, it is you're right, meant to be a culmination, but it ends up just being the final song on an album. And as far as 7 or 8 minute songs, as far as 7 or 8 minute final songs go, I feel like we've reviewed better songs from other albums on this podcast. Like the one that we did, I don't think any of you three remember it. But the final song off of the Weezer album that we did is about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's called Holiday. No, it's not called Holiday. It's called Only in Dreams, actually. And I remember, I think that's a really, really good song, and I think that does what a final song should do, which is end on a really kind of like massive sort of crescendo note, where if you're going to have 7 or 8 minutes, you got to have it build and build and build, and then just have a fucking release in the last maybe minute and a half. And Only in Dreams from the Weezer album does that. But this Group 4, I just fucking forget Exchange for a second, because it's not even the final track. But Group 4, it doesn't have that release that Only in Dreams has to me, and that's why it should be more memorable, because it is the final song, but it isn't, and for other reasons that I've already talked about, you know?
Ethan, do you prefer Only in Dreams or In Dreams?
Or In Dreams, the Roy Orbison song from Blue Velvet.
Candy Colored Clown.
They call the Sandman. Tiptoes into my room every night.
Should we just review Blue Velvet, or should we finish this podcast?
We could talk about Blue
There are two
Velvet if you
options.
guys want. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on Blue Velvet?
10 out of 10 would recommend have your grandma walking in whilst watching it. Going back to your describing an album like a film sort of thing, and how rather it's not like a film in the way that the end sticks with you. I feel like Exchange in Brackets it's the perfect credits song when getting up and leaving.
I that's a good metaphor.
Not to discredit it really, because I think I don't know. I think it does work at the end as a sort of like, yep, you've done it. You've come here for the album. You've reached the end. You can pack up and go home now. It's a sort of
but you described
thing.
it as the packing up and going home
4
song.
minutes
Now.
11 long.
Like, it's
I
just
guess
it's
the thing-
unnecessary if that's how you do it. It's the end of credit song. Group 4 is how the song ends. It's like, God, you know what was that terrible Nirvana song, right? That was the bonus track, and we talked about it, but we really shouldn't have, because Something in the Way is the final track off of Nevermind. It was Endless Nameless, right? The Cricket Bat song. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, is that like an ending credits song, or is that just something that you've sort of tagged on the end that doesn't really belong there?
That's the secret
I mean,
end credit
like
scene.
just...
Teases the next film.
I think my comparison, if we're doing these weird metaphors, is the way that a TV show like Sopranos or BoJack, which is just Sopranos but funny, is episode 12 is like the emotional high point, and then episode 13 is the kind of the more solemn reflecting on what just happened and looking forward to the next season. And I feel like albums always have that with the final song, where you'll have the kind of the last song, and then the kind of the wrapping it up, you know, like the episode 13 in a season of BoJack or Sopranos. I guess that's what Exchange is.
Yeah, Exchange is like the 13th episode of a series of Sopranos. I like that. That's cool.
Ethan, you on season 2, episode 12 yet?
No, I'm trying to remember how many episodes I've watched. Right, so I've just watched the one where Christopher's been shot, right, and he's in the hospital and he's been having visions of himself in hell.
This is the part where I add in the
3
slow
a.m.
fade out.
Yeah, 3 a.m. That's right. And Rich.
The scene where Paulie goes to visit that person.
Oh, what the medium who claims that they can see the people that he's killed. Yeah, that is a really really funny scene. That is a really really funny scene.
Could I just get in one last thing related to the album? Yeah. Which is my new favorite line of anything in a Wikipedia article, which is the heading Mezzanine DNA, and then on the 20th anniversary of Mezzanine's release, the record was encoded into synthetic DNA, a first for an album. I want to know if any other album has had this, because
what the
it
fuck?
says a first. I feel like it's the only, right. The project was in collaboration with Turbo Beads Labs in Switzerland. The digital audio of the album was stored in the form of genetic information. The audio was then compressed using Opus, coded in DNA molecules with 920,000 short DNA strands containing all the data, and then poured into 5,000 tiny glass beads.
It sounds like
that's it. That's the section.
It sounds like some Assassin's Creed, like, activating the Animus project, like, shit. It's like, oh, in the glass beads, we have found your ancestors' information. It's just fucking man next door.
It's just, I wonder where this is now. I just, like, it's like
where are the beads?
In the world, there are 5,000 tiny glass beads with a DNA genetic version of the album Mezzanine. And it's like, there's no way to read that data, I don't think, in a way that you could then play Mezzanine.
Imagine if you're like...
a 5,000 glass beads player.
Imagine it's like, I only listen to music via glass DNA bead.
That's fucking weird.
I hear glass beads are having a
Imagine that. Imagine liking something so much you could get it like encoded into your own DNA, so that you're like, oh, you like pass it on to your children. It's like, hey, fucking Tony Jr., here's the code of VA11 Hall A in your fucking bloodstream.
Yeah,
it's
really weird because people will be talking about like what nationality they are, or what, like, oh, you hear someone, they talk about how they've got Irish blood, right? And then someone will say, oh, I got mezzanine blood in me, like I'm caught mezzanine or something like that.
It's when you're creating like a world on Minecraft or whatever, and you need to like write in a seed that's like a random string of letters, but instead you just like, I don't know, write in the works of Shakespeare. It's just like that's the thing we weren't worrying about but need to worry about when it comes to designing babies.
Imagine if your parents had really shit taste in something, and you had like, I don't know,
that'd be disgusting, right? I'm just imagining, right, having Fred Durst DNA or like Limp Bizkit just in my bloodstream. Like, that'd be the fucking worst thing. I hate my parents.
Just the crunch down.
You have to get like your DNA like surgically fucking altered. No,
should we wrap this up?
Imagine, wait. Imagine like we're in this weird DNA like world, right? And like the DNA like gets corrupted over time, right? Like you've got like mezzanine in your bloodstream, but you've also got like, I don't know, some random fucking like the Ponyo like ending song, and they like crossbreed in your DNA. You get people like creating like weird like it's like, I don't know, someone's got like some metal songs in their DNA and someone's got some electronica songs, and they like come and have a child just to create a weird fusion.
That's fucking weird.
God, we should do a light novel. Alright about this.
Mm.
Anyway, let's end this album. We have to go punch wood in Minecraft. We have to go into the Nether, episode 11.
So I think that's all from us. But
Need to give it
be on the
scores.
lookout for our future. Oh yeah, shit, we do. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, fuck.
Really quick. Really quick.
Yeah.
Ethan,
Yes. Oh, you want me to give my rating?
what are you going to give it? Yeah, go on. Just the number.
So,
No context.
all right. Well, nah. I've got to give a little bit of context. Hang on. So,
Ah, that ruins the joke.
when I first,
Tony, cut this out.
oh fuck's sake, 9.
I'm gonna flip that bad boy around and give it a 6.
I'm gonna give it a 7.
I was going to give it an 8, but you've been shitting on it a little bit. And I've realised I don't remember half the album, so I'll give it a 7.
Well, thank you for listening. We'll join you for...
Good.
Bye.
Yeah. Congratulations if you're one of the few people able to listen to the Mediate's first ever DNA episode. From now on, we will only be releasing our episodes in the form of 5,000 tiny glass DNA beads.
It's the first episode with good editing, too.
We'll see.
Good luck.
Goodbye.